Welcome to another episode of Real Estate the Right Way with your host, Michael.Wright, residential realtor on Long Island, New York, delivering you the best educational content when it comes to residential real estate. Today, we're talking title. What is it? Why do you need it? Before we get started, remember, if you appreciate this content, give me a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you're always notified of new videos, and ask me a question in the comments. I'm always here to help. Let's get started. Title insurance. What is it? Why get it? Why do we need it? Well, in its most simplistic form, if you're getting a mortgage, the bank requires it. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't understand it and understand why it's important. So we'll start with a quick story on one reason or one example of how title really came in handy. So when I first got started in the business, a good friend of mine in a different state was going to buy a condo from a great family friend that he's known for decades. Super stand-up guy, was giving him a smoking deal on the condo, just wanted to kind of unload it, not have it be his responsibility anymore, and this worked out really well for, like I said, my good friend. So he calls me up, explains the situation, and says, I don't really want to overcomplicate things. I don't want to make it difficult for this guy. He's given me such a great deal. I'm not going to hire an attorney. I'm not going to do title. I'm just going to, give him the money, have him sign the deed over, and just make it as simple as possible because he's given me such a great deal. And I said, it's probably a good idea to just have an attorney involved, so that way you know that when you give them the money and the deed is transferred over to you, that actually takes place, because in the tri-state area, in New York, in New Jersey, we're attorney states, so it's customary to have attorneys involved in the process, and you want to protect yourself. And title is a big component of the purchase. You want to make sure that there's no surprises, that obviously you're not aware of, but also that the seller's not aware of. So we hang up the phone, talk to him a couple weeks later. Come to find out, fortunately for him, he actually took my advice, and so I was grateful that he found value in what I had to say. But let me tell you what happened. The title insurance company pulled records from the county, and the county had an unrecorded or an unsatisfied mortgage recording. So there was a $40,000 mortgage that was taken out on this condo, and the county has records that this mortgage wasn't paid off. So the title insurance company reached out to the bank. The bank also said, no, this mortgage amount is still outstanding. We don't have a copy of the payoff amount. Uh-oh. So my buddy reached out to the seller, said, hey, this is going on. What's up? The seller said, oh, I paid that off years ago. Here's a copy of the payoff letter. Submitted it to the title company. The title company submitted it to the bank, submitted it to the county, and the $40,000 debt was wiped away because it was a bookkeeping error on both parts. However, if my friend didn't get title insurance and the deed transferred from the seller to the buyer, my buddy would be stuck with that $40,000 bill, because once the deed transfers to the next person, that's it, square one. So it was very fortunate that they got title insurance. That's one reason why title can be so important. But really, what is it? So title insurance protects you from anyone who thinks that they have a claim against your real property. So that's the house and the land that it's on. So this could be the right to own and occupy said property, or it could be just a stake at some portion of the value. So a common occurrence is if a contractor comes in, does some work on a property, the owner has a disagreement with the contractor, doesn't pay for a portion or all of the work, the contractor can then put a lien on the property and say, listen, I made improvements to this property. I deserve compensation for those improvements. and now the contractor's bill is attached to the property. So if that deed were then to try and transfer to the next person, the county has a record of this lien, and that lien has to be satisfied or resolved before that deed can be transferred to the next person. Another common occurrence that comes up on a title report is unpaid taxes. So the state says you need to pay your property taxes, and if you don't, then the state has a right to some of the portion of the value of the property, because property taxes are the law and they need to be paid. So if they're not paid before that deed transfers to the next person, those outstanding balances need to be satisfied. The title insurance will also talk to the county or the building department or the local building department and make sure there's no outstanding open permits or open violations with regard to the property. Because again, once that deed changes hands, it's now the new owner's responsibility to satisfy any liens, judgments, violations, anything negative that's associated with that property. So the title insurance, which we'll kind of define in a little bit on why it's called insurance, really wants to make sure that when the deed of the home transfers from the current owner to the next owner, it's clear, it's clean, it's got clean title. The most common thing that comes up, I would say, is what's called out of possession. So let me draw you a quick diagram to explain what I mean. So what we have here is a survey, mock-up survey of a property. This solid line, solid square, is the property line. The current owner put in a fence, and maybe they did it themselves, and maybe they didn't measure properly, and they put the fence offset from the property line. So the fence goes over 3 feet into the neighbor's yard. Uh-oh. And also, on this side of the house, there's part of this property on this side of the fence. What is the title company to do? Well, the title company wants to make sure and ensure that no one's staking claim to your property. So really, they don't really care about this slice that's over here. Honestly, they're like, hey, you took a little slice of your neighbor's property and you're using it for your benefit. Cheers to you. We don't care. However, we do care about this slice over here, because we want to make sure that the neighbor on this side doesn't think that this land is theirs. That could be something that comes up in the future. And the title company, the reason why it's called title insurance, their job is to defend you if a claim arises after you take possession. So they're really protecting you, but they're in essence protecting themselves, because they're saying, hey, listen, part of your property is on the opposite side of the fence. We don't want to have to defend any disagreement between you and the neighbor on where this fence is supposed to be and where the property line actually lies. So what are some things that happen in this type of scenario? The thing that most commonly happens is we get what's called a boundary line agreement. And that boundary line agreement is drawn up by the attorney or by the title company, and it's delivered to the neighbor. The neighbor signs it, notarizes it, acknowledges that part of your property or part of this property is on their side of the fence, and they know that this, even if they're like using it, isn't really theirs. So that then gets recorded and you're all good. Let's say this person doesn't want to sign it because it's a legal document, has to be notarized. I don't know. They might think that it's tough to find a notary, even though it's not. They might have a really busy schedule. Maybe they spend 6 months out of state and you can't get a hold of them. Or maybe you just have a bad relationship, or the current owner has a bad relationship with the neighbor and they just want to be a stick in the mud. What to do? Well, You could, I guess, take the fence down, and that would then open it up. You could also put in a gate. You could put a gate into that section of the property so you can access it, because if you have access, then you could say, hey, listen, it's mine. Here's the gate. I can access it. I can get to my section of the property. The other thing you could do is, if it really comes down to, if it's a small slice of the property and you've exhausted all the options, you can't figure out a way to put in a gate and make that satisfactory between you and the seller, you could say, hey, title company, if any issue arises with this slice of the property, don't insure me. Insure the rest of the property, insure the house, insure everything inside of the fence, the front yard, just this little piece here, don't worry about it. The likelihood that the neighbor is going to take possession of that is unlikely, because they really can't. And I was planning on replacing the fence anyway, and when I replace the fence, I'll put it on the property line, and that'll be that. So boundary line agreements are typically the most common thing that comes up in a title search. But honestly, as I said in the beginning, the title company's job is to protect you against anyone that has a claim to the property once you take possession. And in order to do that, the title insurance company actually does something pretty cool. Before you take possession, before you can close, before they give you a clean and clear title, they research what's called the chain of title all the way back from today to when the house was first constructed, and when the property was first designated, the first time it was sold. So who owned it first, and then who bought it after that, who built the house, who was the house and property sold to after that, and then once they completed living there, who did they sell it to, and during each transaction, were all the I's dotted and were all the T's crossed, to make sure that title transferred properly and effectively, to make sure that there's no distant cousin or heir that could possibly stake claim to the property that you're buying. And if they do, the title insurance company is here to protect you. That's why title is so important. Once you get a clear title, that gets submitted to the bank. Your file goes in for final underwriting. Hopefully you get your clear to close. The attorneys schedule the closing date along with you, the seller, seller's attorney, the bank attorney, and then it's time to get to the closing table, which we'll cover in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. This has been another episode of Real Estate the Right Way. Don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, hit the bell, ask me a question in the comments, and as always, tell me what home means to you, and I'll help you get there. Thanks again.